Good afternoon, welcome to Studio One on this Thursday, October 29th. With the upcoming Halloween weekend, October makes an exit and ushering in November. It's good to have you with us. I'm Tom Buehring. Up ahead on this half hour, we'll be joined by Channel 8 sportscaster, sports director Pat Sweeney. Also with us, Associate Professor of English and Professor of Peace Studies James McKenzie, who has authored an essay entitled Nuclear Weapons of Grand Forks, an Interpretive Catalog. And on our Open Door segment, we'll feature comedy's favorite sibling rivalry, Tommy and Dick Smothers, the Smothers Brothers. But first, we go to the news desk with Courtney Bateman. Courtney?
Thank you, Tom. Sex education should be a top priority in North Dakota's fight against AIDS, according to the state health officer. In a report to Governor Sinner today, Dr. Robert Wentz said education is one of the few tools officials have to protect the public from acquired immune deficiency syndrome. The report also criticized many health professionals for reacting irrationally to the disease. Organizers of UND's Safer Sex Week agree that education is the key, and that's the reason behind distribution of safer sex kits last week. Some of the packets contain condoms, and as Studio One's Gail Carlson reports, some people thought that carried the education process too far.
6,000 condoms created an uproar on the UND campus last week. The condoms were given to students prior to Safer Sex Week as a method of preventing AIDS. Contraception is only one method used to prevent spreading of the disease, but to many students it is a difficult method to handle. UND Director of Women's Studies, Bonnie Clark, says Safer Sex Week is a big step for UND, but at the same time it is challenging religious values.
Many people feel very vulnerable, and that we haven't had straight messages from society as to how we should go about developing our sexuality. There's many confusing messages.
The Newman Center's Father James Ermer has no problem with Safer Sex Week, but he says UND has no right using students' money for something that is morally offensive. All three churches on campus support abstinence and chastity. United Campus Ministry Director Reverend John Jarman says the Protestant Church also supports the safer sex kits.
Because, yes, they do represent birth control, but for this conference, they don't. They represent protection from a virus.
Women's Studies Director Clark says AIDS has hit North Dakota and there is no time to waste. She says technology alone cannot prevent AIDS, but education can.
Education is going to have to be the defense that we put all of our eggs in one basket for.
Ermer says if safer sex kits were educational, there would only be one condom in the kit, not three. But to those who support putting condoms in the kits, the moral arguments distract from the real issue, the prevention of AIDS.
And I guess my only concern is maybe the condom has, become a bigger issue than the disease. And that's too bad because the disease is real and it's dangerous.
Although UND's Safe Sex Week is controversial, it does create an awareness about AIDS. After students weigh their options, abstinence, contraception, or pure risk, it becomes a personal decision and is no longer a matter for the university. Gail Carlson, Studio One.
The on-again, off-again meeting between General Secretary Gorbachev and President Reagan is back on again. Soviet officials say the summit is fixed for the end of the year. Topics expected to be discussed include questions about strategic offensive weapons and the anti-ballistic missile treaty. There's no mention of a location for the talks, but indications so far have been that the meeting would be held in the United States. Tom?
Okay, thank you, Courtney. For all of our little trick-or-treaters, let's do what we can to help make our area both safe and enjoyable for Saturday evening. And for everybody else who's all dressed up with no place to go, a couple of events worth mentioning. Tomorrow night, Friday the 30th, there will be a Halloween costume dance with Zorte performing. That will be at the Union Ballroom from 9 p.m. to 1 a.m. Prizes will be given for the best costume. And also the Student Alumni Association invites you to take part in a grand costume party at the Saturday night Sioux Alaska Anchorage hockey game. There will be a cash prize for best costuming determined between periods of hockey. That's Saturday night at 7:35. Meteorologist Jay Searles is here to give us a look at our weather. Jay?
Thank you, Tom. Currently at 4 in the Grand Forks area under a partly cloudy sky. The temperature is 62 degrees. The relative humidity is a dry 37%, and the winds are south and southwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Taking a look at the forecast map, the nation's high yesterday was a warm 96 degrees in Laughlin, Nevada, and a cool low this morning of 17 degrees in West Yellowstone, Montana. Across the east, an area of high pressure is pushed into the southeast and south central. Temperatures are very warm under clear skies, 80s in southern Texas and southern Florida. An area of low pressure, or a trough of low pressure, is pushed through the eastern Great Lakes, bringing showers and light rain through the eastern Great Lakes and northeastern U.S. Across the west, an area of high pressure built into the Rockies yesterday brought cool temperatures this morning into the northern Rockies, Idaho, Montana, and Utah. And across much of the west, an area of low pressure is pushed in from the Pacific, bringing lots of moisture, scattered showers and rain from Utah, Wyoming, and Nevada and California, with some fog along the California coast. Another area of rain up off of Washington is pushed into Port Washington area, bringing some showers in that area. A low pressure system just north of Lake Winnipeg has a warm front trailing down through western Minnesota, bringing some mild temperatures. Warm air is pushing up ahead of it. The temperatures have reached the 60s and 70s across South Dakota and much of North Dakota. Behind this cold front that is moving in across southern Canada and into the nation, temperatures are only in the 50s, not much temperature difference behind it, and no moisture is associated with it. That's what it looks like across the nation today. I'm meteorologist Jay Searles. I'll be back a little bit later in the program with the Red River Valley weekend forecast. Tom?
Sounds good. Thank you, Jay. The Chester Fritz Auditorium has been busy these last few weeks, and the same pace continues early into next week. A couple of events we want to mention. The Murray Lewis Dance Company with the Dave Brubeck Quartet will perform Monday night at 8:15, which will be a combination of jazz and choreography. The following evening, on Tuesday, the 3rd of November, a performer for both presidents and popes. Red Skelton will grace the Fritz with an 8:15 start. You can be sure that is going to be one special evening. He's quite a performer, a very, very talented man. Red Skelton on Tuesday evening. Tickets for both events are on sale at the Chester Fritz and all Centig outlets. When we return, we'll talk sports with Pat Sweeney here on Studio One.
Do you have your passport?
For the 3rd time, yes.
Do you have everything?
Kids, relax. If we weren't grown-ups, they wouldn't have let us join the Peace Corps.
Peace Corps. It's creating food systems in Africa, building homes in Costa Rica, and fighting malaria in Asia. It's teaching math and learning French. It's working side by side. It's been tough, but for 25 years, the Peace Corps has been making a difference in the world.
Mom, Dad, I'm so proud of you.
Peace Corps, the toughest job you'll ever love.
Welcome back to Studio One. You're most familiar with him from the 6 and 10 o'clock sports on WDAZ-TV. Joining us now is sportscaster, sports director Pat Sweeney. It's good to have you with us, Pat.
Thank you, Tom. Good to be here.
Nice change of direction here on this side of the camera, or this side of the desk, maybe?
Yes, I'm the one usually asking the question.
What about last weekend? Quite a weekend?
Quite a week. That's an understatement. I went down for the World Series, and I don't think I'll ever experience anything quite like that. Again, as a Twin Cities native, it was especially exciting for me. I've been a Twins fan since I was a little kid, and I may be dead by the time they get in there again, so you have to savor it when it happens.
And the moral of the story is you got tickets as a fan.
That's right. You have to have faith, folks. You have to send in ahead of time like I did, because they had ticket requests, and everybody who requested tickets got in. They didn't get the response that they thought they were going to get, and there was no lottery like there was in the 85 All-Star game, so I lucked out.
Now, I know a World Series you could involve yourself as a fan, but is that kind of difficult after a while? Do you begin to perceive a game instead of as a fan, as a reporter?
No, I think when I go as a fan, I tend to maybe enjoy it even more, because I'm not worried about taking notes. I'm not worried about the photographer getting this shot or that shot or whatever it happens to be. I have a tendency more to just sit back and relax and enjoy the game.
Is it frustrating for you to jump from a major market like Minneapolis, going down to a ball game, being raised in that area, and coming up to Grand Forks, a smaller market, heavy emphasis in local reporting? Is that an adjustment to make?
Well, no, I think when you go down there and see the newscasts and sportscasts down there, sure, you get a little jealous of the toys that they have and the things that they can do, and the people on the staff. That's kind of difficult when you see everything that they can do. Our sports staff at WDAZ is 2.5 people. And we don't have a live van or anything like that. We don't have the things to play with. So from that standpoint, I'm a little jealous. But the local sports up here are important too, and we're still in the vicinity and the region that we still cover the Twins and Vikings and North Stars.
Now, we couldn't go throughout this interview without you giving us a sports minus. You brought us a package, so we're gonna let you do that now.
All right. as I told one of your staff members, Gordy Christian, I feel like Marv Albert on David Letterman. Here's George Frazier of the Twins, yes. Oh, he took his lumps along the way to that World Series win. Even the umpires found that the hardest thing in baseball is the baseball itself, that one definitely in the strike zone. The Detroit Tigers had a pretty good season in spite of these Detroit newspaper photographers who made news instead of covering it. Please get out of the way. Now, the worst rundown of the year by the Kansas City Royals. They've got Henry Cotto of the Yankees hung up between third and home. Cotto goes back to third, he's safe. Then they get Don Mattingly trapped between second and third. Meanwhile, Cotto comes in to score. They are still chasing Mattingly. Mattingly goes back to second, but Dave Winfield is also there. Angel Salazar says somebody has to be out, and the ump says it's Winfield. And did you ever wonder how the UND marching band gets ready for Saturday football games? They go through intense training drills just like the players do. That's the Studio One edition of Sports Minuses. What'd you think of it today? I guess we'd have to leave it to Bert to add the comic relief at the end there.
As only Bert can do. Smaller markets, Pat, more competitive than larger markets, or do they tend to be more friendly?
Oh, I haven't noticed much animosity up here or in the Twin Cities. I've seen the reporters down there covering games, and I think it's just as competitive up here as it is down there. People can be friends in the business, but they can also be competitors.
Kind of an interesting observation I made during the World Series. The USA Today gave several write-ups from different perspectives of people sprinkled all over the U.S., almost capsulizing what would be most important for their area to know and kind of take a different perception. Do you feel with Grand Forks that you're kind of the eyes and ears, that you have to become familiar with what the region really wants to see and hear, perhaps like at a dome?
I think so. It helps when you bump into people down there that you know and they're from the area. I see a lot of people from Thief River Falls, Grand Forks, Devil's Lake, you name it. A lot of people have been going to those Twins games. And so there is an interest. And you know, I'm not saying that television sports is the be-all and end-all and the last word in coverage. I think you know, the newspapers up here do a great job and everything. You have to I have to read the newspaper too to get a grasp on it, but it's not a bad job overall.
We enjoy it too. Thanks, Pat, so much for stopping by. Thanks for the Sports Minuses.
You bet.
WDAZ Sportscaster, Sports Director Pat Sweeney. We're going to take a break for this, and when we return, a look at our Open Door segment, so stay with us.
How does this man consistently draw 2,000 students a year to New York's most talked about film class? How does he attract the finest creative talent in the film world? Guests like Woody Allen, Robert De Niro, Martin Scorsese, Dustin Hoffman, Deborah Winger, William Hurt, Steven Spielberg, Robin Williams, Robert Redford, Shirley MacLaine, just to name a few? Why do his students describe him as brilliant, charismatic, and his class provocative, inspiring, exhilarating? Find out for yourself. Richard Brown's Screening Room, a whole new way to look at movies. Watch it on NCTV.
It has been 26 years since America first laughed with the Smothers Brothers, years that have taken them from San Francisco's Purple Onion in 1959 to the main rooms in Las Vegas, Atlantic City, and Lake Tahoe. In the process, there have been 10 albums, 3 of them gold, and 3 network television series. There was even a brief retirement of the act for 4 years before returning to stage their ever-popular sibling rivalry. Today in our Open Door segment, a look at the Smothers Brothers.
We began as musicians. Not one of us was not a musician.
I was a musician.
And I'm still not a musician.
Still trying. But we were really trying to be musical, and we were a vocal group. Yeah. And that's what we did primarily. When in high school, we sang in choirs, and we had a quartet, and we had trios and stuff like that, and that's where it started.
What is the key ingredient? What made it work in the 60s and continues to make it work up until today?
The laugh, the comedy, why
sincerity. I think you did the speech and what you do today.
Well, what it is you can spend time on stage, and anytime you can get on stage and you can keep someone's attention. You don't have to be funny. If you can keep their attention, if you have no valid reason for keeping their attention except having that ability to keep their attention, then you can create some tension, and then you release and you get laughter. And I was always awkward, and I would people felt real kind of embarrassed for me.
That's
and I
true.
got great laughter all the time from the time I could speak, from the time I was in Yeah, 7th, 8th, 9th grade, I knew I had some kind of a thing that people would laugh at. I didn't define it until later on in life.
It's a special quality to hold one's attention. You know, everybody out there, when there's people in your class, you know, when they stand up, you look at them. They could have nothing to say, but you're still there like a dog wagging your tail waiting for him to say something. Then when he says something, he doesn't have to say anything. And you think that's just terrific. And there's people like that, and most of the comics have that quality.
Now, I said take it 3 times. You ignored me. Why would I thank you for that?
I didn't hear you say take it.
Oh, come on, Tom. I said take it, you know.
If I'd heard you say take it, I would have taken it.
I don't think you would have. You're standing up here. You can hear me now.
If I could live my life over again for a simple
come on, Tom. You don't have to live your life over again.
I just didn't hear you say take it.
People did not come here to hear us argue.
Some of them did.
When you split up in the 70s for a little while, you both parted ways and both got into theater. Was that fulfilling or was that frustrating?
It was 2 things. It was very fulfilling and it was very frustrating.
And very frightening.
Yes, it was.
You went out there as a star, as the draw, and at the same time we're trying to learn your craft with professionals in supporting roles who could eat you up. They were so good. And so that was the frightening part, trying not to fail and look too bad while learning. But it was exhilarating because it brought us to Broadway in about 2.5 years.
And also we learned a whole lot of techniques, acting techniques that we never even knew we didn't know. And we came back.
we never knew we didn't know these
we
things.
didn't even know we didn't know them. And when we got back and did our act together, it was a whole lot. The act has grown so much. We're a classic form of comedy team that very few people are doing nowadays.
It didn't sound like you said
What do you think you thought it sounded like?
Sounded like you said naked. Or bacon, naked bacon. It sounded like you were saying naked bacon.
Oh boy, that clears it all up, doesn't it? Makes a lot of sense. I'm going to walk out here, start singing Stop, turn to my brother, and then I'm going to say naked bacon. Yeah.
Didn't make any sense to me either, so I just ignored it. I don't even know what naked bacon is, and if I did, I wouldn't do it.
Wait a minute. How could you ignore it? I never said naked bacon. How could you ignore something I never said?
Took a lot of imagination.
Took a lot of concentration.
I only heard you say take it once.
You heard me say it once? Which time?
3rd time.
How did you know it was the 3rd time if you didn't hear the first 2?
I counted backwards for the last.
Backwards.
You know what our secret was?
Fear.
No. Unique.
Unique, that's right.
And that's all it is. It's just a great little trick. It's a cheap trick. We didn't know it at the time. It's like the Wright brothers made they're always remembering it wasn't a very good plane, but it was unique.
It flew. It was the first one that flew.
And Dickie and I had kind of a unique relationship, and it was different. And that's kind of what
That's
it was.
important. You know, when was it Julie Budd came along and said, boy, she sounds just like Streisand. Well, you don't make a hit sounding like anybody else or doing anybody else. So if anybody's out there thinking of comedy or whatever, look at their uniqueness. Find your uniqueness more than how you're like somebody famous. How are you not like?
But isn't that hard today? With everybody doing everything, isn't it hard? Isn't it hard to find uniqueness?
Well, it's always difficult to be unique. There was only one Wright brother. But the point is to look for it and not to change your routine to be like someone else because that was successful. Young rock groups are always copying each other, and they're kind of clones. And comedy has a tendency to clone itself. And if you are genuinely funny and you have a sense of timing, which is what comedy is about, always tend towards the different. Don't tend towards the other side.
You may need to do that copying or cloning initially in your career, and a lot of musical groups followed the Kingston Trio, then took their left or right. A lot of them copied a little bit of the Everly Brothers and went their other directions. But unless you are really good and much better than the one you're imitating, you better take a left. Robin Williams, you could tell right away, he's the son of Jonathan Winters.
Very impressed by Jonathan Winters, yes.
Showbiz-wise, you see him. We went to a concert with Robin. We watched Jonathan Winters in San Francisco, and there's Robin up there. You know, but Robin,
he used that little bit of.
He used it to get it going, but he's phenomenal. That man's he's unique. He could do 3 one-hour shows in a row, everyone different, and he's never thought of them before.
Now, in your routine, is the conflict genuine, or do you get along off stage?
Well, we've worked it out, but we really do disagree about a lot of things. Just
I don't think so. I don't think we don't disagree about
a lot of things.
No,
we
don't.
Well, generally
he knows it's not true. He's just doing that to be well liked.
The point is that when you're a comedy team, you are two individuals, and whether it be Rowan and Martin or Evan Costello, there was always a definite friction. And if you work that friction, you don't even have to think about attitudes. You have to make up conflicts. We got it.
Now, wouldn't it be great if the two identical twins, and they were identical persons?
I can't imagine identical twins being a comedy
Nobody would laugh at them, but they kept agreeing with each other, and one do a stupid thing, the other do a stupider thing. Yeah. Yes, this is an honest relationship, and that's one of the first things, not worst, that we learned.
What was the worst things we ever experienced when we started out, and then it became
sincere. Someone said, I think it was Lou Gottlieb of the Limelighters, he said, you've got to be honest on stage. The audience will know it if you're not. And actually, I'm disagreeable with most everybody off stage. I play no favorites.
He's the authoritarian figure.
I'm not
Tommy and Dick Smothers, who are again revitalizing their act. They're gaining visibility as spokesmen for Magnavox and were just chosen as spokesmen for the National Lung Association, which will take them to the White House in a couple of weeks to unveil the new Christmas eels with President Reagan. And look, in January, CBS will air a Smothers Brothers television special. When we return, we'll talk with peace studies activist James McKenzie, here on Studio One.
There was a time when an 18-year-old couldn't vote. A time when there was no meaningful way for young adults to express their opinions. What changed that? The 26th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. The Constitution are words we live by.
Welcome back. James McKenzie is an associate professor of English and a peace studies activist who has penned his perspective in a recent essay entitled Nuclear Weapons of Grand Forks, an Interpretive Catalog. James McKenzie, it's good to have you with us.
Hi, thank you. Good to be here.
An interpretive catalog. The issue of nuclear arms, when we debate over it, is the perspective, is it an interpretive perspective? What it might mean to me does not necessarily mean the same thing to you.
Yes, I think it is interpretive. My goal in the essay, first of all, was to gather the information in one place about all the various weapon systems that exist here in eastern North Dakota and Grand Forks, especially from the base. And I've been here 17 years. I knew that there were nuclear weapons here when I came here, but I didn't really know what all was here and how they interrelated. And as I became more and more interested in the issue, I realized that other people didn't know the specifics either. So one of my goals was to find out all that I could about what all the various systems were here, what they were, how many there were, what their missions were, how they, and so forth. But even in doing that, there is a kind of interpretation, a kind of hidden agenda, which I have, which is that if people simply get the information in some clear, concise way, all in one place, it's more likely that we will begin to find ways to control them and eventually eliminate them.
Do you feel people generally are not informed?
I think it's changing. I used to take surveys in classes, as a matter of fact, here, and I remember having students who were from all around North Dakota and elsewhere, but mostly North Dakota, who thought that most of the missiles here were actually anti-missile missiles. We didn't have missiles that had nuclear weapons aimed at the Soviet Union. I think that's changed now over the last years. But some of the other things that I address in the essay that I don't think are so clearly understood are the policies and the missions that the missiles have. And so I've noticed that people have a sense, they have a notion of what a great quantity there is. But if you ask people, but the ways that they're targeted and the ways that they are intended to be used have changed since they were first deployed, and I don't think that message is out yet.
In the essay, Jim, you had mentioned that there were some economic rewards that kind of maybe lulled people into accepting the weapons coming in.
which is another part of the interpretation of the essay, I guess, or the catalog. Yeah, I think that with this issue, well, any community wants to create jobs, and we have a model of growth, almost infinite growth. And so when the military proposes a system, they will always address the economic issue at the local level. And I've been to public hearings most recently over the backscatter radar system, and almost the only people that showed up were contractors. So here was the Air Force coming to propose a new system. Well, the system's already proposed, and they're going to cite it. The only members from the public who showed up were people who had quite legitimate interests in, if it's going to be here, we want the dollars. So I think that does, you know, a community's desire to have jobs and money does color.
Really brief. If people are informed, Jim, will they act? Will local people act?
Well, I think, I mean, yes, I think they will. We are, for better or worse, we're a democracy, and the way democracy works is people need to get information, and they act one way or another. So yes, briefly, I think they do.
Interesting. James McKenzie, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
James McKenzie, professor of English and Peace Studies activist. We'll be back with more of Studio One after this.
This week on the golden years of television, it's the Jack Benny Show.
As you probably know, this is my second TV show of the season.
It's an all-star jam session with Fred McMurray, Kirk Douglas, and a whole lot more.
I told all those guys this was a benefit.
Watch the golden years of television all this week on NCTV.
Lou Gossett is annoyed.
Hey, you know, we've got some real bad guys in this country. Abusing public lands, defacing parks, robbing historic sites. These are our lands, yours and mine. You know, the good guys. Now, you gonna let a bunch of bad guys run us off our public lands? Or are you gonna help save the lands? Let's show these bad guys that the good guys always win.
Write Take Pride in America. Post Office Box 1339, Jessup, Maryland, 20794.
Grand Forks Community Theater will present Wait Until Dark beginning this weekend. This is one scary one, so be sure to bring somebody to hang on to. And meteorologist Jay Searles, he's one kind of a scary kind of a guy, and he's here to give us a frightening look at our forecast. Jay?
Thank you, Tom. You're pretty scary yourself, you know that. Tonight, we can expect that cold front to have passed through us, and by tomorrow morning, we'll push down into northern Iowa and across South Dakota. Temperatures will cool off into the lower 20s, upper 20s across Canada, in our region, across North Dakota and Minnesota, in the lower 30s, and the upper 30s across South Dakota and Minnesota. Warmer south of that front. Tonight, the skies will be partly cloudy, and the winds will become northwest as that front passes at 10 to 15 miles per hour. We'll have a low of 32 degrees. Friday will be a little cooler, but we'll still have a high of 53 degrees, pretty mild. Indian summer will return this weekend, looking really good with a high of 64 on Saturday. Increasing clouds, a little cooler on Sunday with a high of about 55. Chance of showers as clouds increase. That's the forecast. I'm meteorologist Jay Searles. Have a great weekend. Tom?
Thank you, Jay. It's good to be with you. We want to thank everybody for being with us. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.